The following program is brought to you by Rogers Anyplace TV. Enjoy exclusive content for free. Visit RogersAnyplaceTV.com.
Well, hello folks, and thanks for joining us again here on Our Community. I'm your host, Kevin Young, and I'm joined with my good friend, Quinn. Jesso. Quinn, thanks a lot for coming by and having a chat.
Thanks for having me here.
Oh, listen, I want to know a little bit about Quinn, your life growing up, what it was like for you, and leading up to a little bit now. So why don't we start off a little bit when you were younger. What was life like for you?
I mean, a small town, Newfoundland, so it's a little bit different around. I didn't realize who I was, I guess, until much later in my life. Mm-hmm. So you always knew there was something wrong, but not really what that is. Right. So, I mean, I think I had a fairly normal upbringing for the most part. I mean, Dad and Mom were together for quite a few years, so that was always good. And we grew up in Flat Bay Brook, which is a very, very small community. I think we may have had 50 people there the whole time. Yeah. And moved around a bit. We were in St. George's for a while, and then we moved into Stephenville after that, but because of the amalgamations of the schools, you kind of bouncing from school to school, classroom to classroom, etc. But overall, it wasn't bad. Went on from there to college out here in Corner Brook, actually, mm-hmm. from 2000 to like 2003. Right. And then I did another stint in Stephenville with CNA again, with right. computer science, and trying to, I guess, find my path, figure out what's me, where do I want to go, who do I want to be, etc. And as time went on, I mean, you figure things out, you know? Right, like right. Nothing is given to you. Everybody has to go through the trials and tribulations to get where we need to be. And here I am now.
Yeah, so growing up, you were feeling like didn't know where you belong. You were in a boy's body, unable to decipher what this was all about. How did that feel for you?
It was like, once I figured out what was the cause, a lot of the times from when I was younger, I was like, why do I want to feel like this? But why do I feel like this? And like, therapy was a great thing. Right. So I started doing that around 2016, give or take. And that kind of helped me figure out a lot of things. Right. So like, before, I just thought it was just the anxiety, just the depression, you know, you don't like how you look, you don't like how you feel, et cetera, but you figure out what's the cause of that, what's the base cause of it, mm-hmm. and once you figure that out, everything else kind of slowly falls into place. Right. So it's like growing up realizing that I liked being a certain way, but couldn't, right. or I wanted to act a certain way, but couldn't. Right. And the frustration that came from that, and then everything else with it. So you have all of this anxiety on you, which causes your depression. So I mean, you're become a complete introvert. I didn't leave the house if I didn't have to. I didn't want to be around people if I didn't have to. And if you're home and you're not doing anything, you're eating, so now you've got weight gain on top of everything else, and that increases your body image. So you just feel like you just don't fit, you don't belong, and that's a lot on anybody growing up.
It is. So you think growing up in your generation was a bit more difficult than what we're experiencing? I think youth today that are going through what you were going through growing up, maybe having a little bit of an easier time. I don't want to say it's an easy time, but certainly.
I wouldn't say easier. Right. Like, in the long run, it might be, because people are a bit more accepting now than what they were back when I was growing up. I mean, I was born in the 80s, mm-hmm. so if I would have tried to explain to people back then, if I knew the difference, because up until, again, to my late 20s, I didn't even know what trans was. Right. And once I understood that, it was like you had this epiphany, like everything makes sense, you know? But thinking back then, I don't think people were ready for it. Right. Like, it's a lot. Like, unless you're exposed to it, then it's going to be different.
And I think a lot of that might have to do with the perception of mental health in and of itself.
Oh yeah.
Correct? I mean, mental health for many, for years, was taboo. It wasn't talked about much, no matter if it went from anything from depression, to suicidal thoughts and so on and so forth. If somebody struggled with mental health, it was taboo. It wasn't talked about much. But now we seem to be talking about it a lot more.
We do. There's so many organizations out there now, like Bell Let's Talk. Rogers is going to be doing their own stuff with it as well. The different organizations within the community that push for talk, especially for a lot of men, because it seems to be stereotypically that men don't talk about their feelings back then as much. And now it's pushing to, there's support groups for men now that they can go and they can express themselves in a safe environment with no bias, no judgment, and it lets them understand that, like, for example, people who thought that being angry was bad. Being angry is an emotion, like anything else. It's okay to be angry.
Right.
It's how you express that anger. It's okay to feel negative about something, but it's how you react to that negativity. If someone comes up to me, for example, and says that I'm still a guy, okay, I can take that and have it completely ruin my day, or I can take that as a moment to educate that person. It's like, okay, I was born male, but I identify as female, my pronouns are she, her. This is how you would talk to a person who is going through a transition or anything like that. Now again, not everybody is going to be like receptive to it.
Sure.
But you're going to get those people. But every little bit of change helps that progress.
Right. Right. So thinking about your life leading up to this moment. So when is it you started to identify with those pronouns? It was later in life?
It was like I met through a friend of mine, her boyfriend, and he was trans, and he and I chatted a lot. And the more and more we talked about things, the more things started to click in. It's like, oh, that's why.
Right.
And then it's bad enough when you already feel like you're overweight or bigger than everybody else, because I was always big. But once that clicked in, it's like, oh, that's another reason why I felt this way.
Right.
And once I came to that realization, they gave me the option when I went in to visit them one weekend to go by she, her pronouns for the week that I was there. And it was like the weight of the world come off my shoulders.
Right.
And like I bawled, I straight up cried.
Yeah.
And since then, and telling people in confidence in the beginning, and then when I finally just said, nope, this is me, I'm unapologetically me, I'm gonna be my own person, do life the way I wanna do it, and things have been getting better. I'm engaged now.
Right.
Everything is going good there. I have the job that is like perfect for what I'm doing, and like I get to help people with mental health issues, raising awareness for stigma awareness. I get to be an activist for rainbow communities, and I think everything I've done up till now is what's got me to this point.
Right.
So I can use all of my lived experience so far to try to help other people that might be going through the same issues now.
Excellent.
So I think it sucked
Right.
going through it all.
Of course.
But I wouldn't be who I am now if not for the trials and tribulations that I went through.
Right.
And I can use that to help other people.
So you had a friend that helped you kind of become who you are today. And of course, thinking about the people who are struggling, I think it's very important to have someone there to help. And you seem to have wanted to take that role on yourself, correct?
I
Helping
think,
others?
yes, like I think it's bad enough having to go through everything that we go through in a run of a life normally,
Right.
adding all the other layers of complexity to that. So I think having somebody initially help me to kind of really, and that's your time, be able to go and do that for other people.
Right.
And I think in the long run, if everybody, whether they're trans or not, if we're helping other people, then everybody else is going to be okay.
Right.
Like, you can't just have everything for yourself. You need to be able to share it. So doing things like this or working for the organizations I work for, I get to use all those lived experiences to help other people. And that's kind of the goal.
Awesome. Now, you did mention earlier, too, that you're engaged. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
Share
you
that
very
with me
much.
a little bit, if you don't mind.
We met online, and we just kind of really hit it off, and we moved in together, and then it just progressed from there. And we have 3 adorable little animals. Bailey is home in the kennel right now, probably very upset with me. And Callie and Oscar, and she's actually in St. John's right now, but she'll be back in a couple of days. So, but we're really good. Hopefully, everything falls into place as we need it. We're shooting for an August date, 2022, for the wedding. So I'm really looking forward to it. Like, it's something I never thought I would ever get to be. Like, once I realized who I was and how I was going to progress, I thought, like some people, like, I'm too old to do this, or I'm never going to be the bride, or I'm never going to be this, or whatever. And that's a lot of stereotypes that are just pushed on us that break the mold, like, be who you are, not what everybody else is. I'm sure people have seen the meme online about the 2 flowers, like, you're always blooming, but we're 2 different flowers.
Yes.
Like, you can bloom yourself. You don't have to be like everybody else.
Of course.
So, I mean, I never thought I'd ever get to be the bride, and here I am going to be the bride. So I'm like, wow, this actually happens.
So that's exciting.
It is. Yeah. It's so positive to think that, these things are happening to me that I thought would never happen. But when you've got anxiety and you got depression and these things are just piling on top of you, having, like, true happiness come true in the end, it's like, it really makes your eyes open. You're like, wow, I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, I got here,
Well, I'm very happy for you, because I know that it was a struggle for you in life, going through what you've had to go through. And now, just seeing your eyes, you can see the joy and the happiness that you're feeling and experiencing right now. So for anybody who's watching, and if you're feeling yourself going through any kind of these emotions and, of course, the negative emotions and feelings, have hope. As Quinn is showing us today, that you can have hope. There certainly can be joy in your life and happiness, especially when you have loved ones.
I think what I would tell people is the journey's rough, but everybody will eventually get there. Even if you're doing this by yourself, have faith in yourself that you will get and be where you need to be.
Right.
Like, you're going to get knocked down, but it doesn't matter how many times you knock down, it's how many times you get back up.
Yes.
So keep getting up, keep pushing forward. Leave yesterday, and deal with the present. Don't worry about the future, worry about the present, and deal with each day as you go. Life's going to get better.
And there are a lot of resources too.
There are. Like, there's so many places you can go. You can go to Doorways if you're looking for someone to talk to. There's so many different organizations that are going to be out there that can help. And I mean, if anyone needs those resources, I can help, like, navigate to where they need to go to for that kind of thing. But I mean, I really think in the end, it's just have faith in yourself and understand that teenage years are rough. Going through high school, it's never overly easy for most of us, even the most successful of us. But high school is just high school.
Yes.
After high school, life really starts, and then the cliques don't matter, the random groups don't matter. They're still good. If that was your friend pool and that's positive for you, fine. But for those who are negatively impacting on the rest of us, things get better after that. I've got a huge support list of friends right now and family that I know I can turn to if I need something.
And that's wonderful.
Right? That's it.
Yeah. So Quinn is your name.
Yes.
That's not the name you were born with. That was a name that you had chosen?
That's the name that I chose.
Yeah. Now, does this tattoo of yours have any indication as to why that was a chosen name?
Kind of yes, kind of no. I've always loved the name Quinn. And as time went on, it's a name that I've loved since the early 90s. And I always thought that should have been my name. And oddly enough, around the same time, the Batman animated series came out and Harley Quinn got introduced. And I'm like, this is my spirit animal. And I just became really, like, this character was the best. I loved how the character was portrayed, how she became her own independent. And I was like, this is a strong character. And I just became really, like, that was my character to go to. And I have a lot of Harley Quinn memorabilia and collectibles, and I mean, I must love it considering I got a tattoo on my wrist.
I think so. Yeah.
But I mean, every person, I think, your parents give you a name when you're born. But if you don't like that name, whether you're trans or not. There's no reason why you can't change it to something else.
Sure.
It's your name temporarily. If you want to keep it, fine. If you want to change it, change it.
Right.
I don't think there should be a whole lot of emphasis on keeping a certain name. It's your name. If it doesn't feel comfortable to you, then why keep it? Change it to something that suits who you are.
Absolutely.
You know?
And it's one of the things that I love about my name. I'm going to share with the audience. A lot of people chuckle, but it's a name that means handsome. So I didn't like it growing up. Found out what it meant, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna love this name and embrace it. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that. I also know that you're involved in technology a little bit. So share a little bit about your passion for technology.
I've always been a tech junkie. I don't do it as much as I used to. I used to be an IT manager for basically it's a call center company, and they were international. So we had sites across Newfoundland, Montreal, and in India, and I became basically the IT manager for that. And even prior to that, I have more fun playing with the tiny electronics like Raspberry Pis and like little Komodo boards and stuff that you can really just do anything with. Something silly like teaching it to turn on and off a light. It's the fun. It's just the sitting down and tinkering with it and getting it to do something that probably somebody else never thought of.
Right.
So you get to explore that way. Like my stick people look crazy. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler, but computer-wise, I'm pretty good with it. So like going really into like networking and system security and stuff like that was really fun, and I did enjoy it for quite some time.
Right.
But I think even now, working with mental health, you're almost working with a different type of computer. Human brain's the ultimate computer, so I'm still working with tech, but in a different way.
Yeah, excellent. That's a great transition, actually, to going from that mentality. Now, you said you went to college.
I did.
This way, is that what you studied?
Initially I did programmer analyst networking here at CNA. That was in the early 2000s, and I did a year and a half of computer science in Stephenville, and went from there and tried to find work with that. But that was when the IT boom was there, so you could throw a rock and hit an IT person at that point. So there was too many of us, the market got flooded. From there, I did industrial construction electrician at Academy Canada here in Corner Brook. And oddly enough, shortly after finishing that program, I started doing more tech work. I'm like, okay, I can make a living at this.
Yeah.
And it went from there. And I did tech for, I think till 2015, something around there, before I finally got out of it. The company I worked for closed their doors, went very smaller options, and I had the option to go back to school. And at the time, where I was still seeing my therapist, she's like, you would be perfect for this.
Right.
And that was child and youth care worker.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that program was really good. I had a lot of social connections from it, a lot of organizations that I had the pleasure of working with, CYN, the Canadian Mental Health and Addictions, the Women's Center back in Stephenville, and all of those connections and skills brought me to the job that I'm doing now. So it's still a lot of social networking, and I'm still learning who everybody is and what everybody does. But at the end of the day, you go home and you feel like you've made a difference.
Right. So tech, helping people, obviously busy, but what else is it that Quinn likes to do in her spare time?
I'm a gamer. I've always been a gamer, and I probably always will be a gamer.
Yeah.
I will go home and boot up any silly game for something to do. I'm a huge Nintendo nerd, so I'll sit down and play Switch all day.
Yeah.
I also love playing music. I'll sit down and play guitar for hours until your
play
fingers
guitar?
hurt. I love playing guitar.
I did not know that.
I used to do open mics at a couple of the clubs back home back in the early 2000s. That was always fun. But I try to do everything. I love being outdoors in the summer, too cold in the winter. But geocaching, for anybody who does it, I would recommend it. You're basically using $1 million satellites to find Tupperware in the woods. But it's fun. Like, I try to stay busy, especially in the summer times, because you're out, you're enjoying the sun. We live in Newfoundland, we don't get much of it. So I'd rather try to enjoy myself as much as I can.
Right. Your fiance, same thing?
She's a cardiologist tech.
Oh, wow.
So she works at Western Health.
Yeah.
And if she's seeing this, she's probably very upset with me right now. But she likes the Mario games a lot. So me and her will play like Mario Party or Mario Kart on Switch. That's kind of how me and her will pass our time. Huge Harry Potter nerds. We've watched the series more times than I can count at this point.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're a good match. Like, we wake up every morning, we do our thing. She's always to work earlier than I am. We come home in the evening, we cook our supper. I mean, it's nice. It's comfortable. We love each other, and I don't think I can imagine a day without her.
Well, that's fantastic. If anyone wants to reach out to certain organizations, I know you mentioned that there are some around. What are some of the ones that you would recommend? Obviously, there's one that you work with.
Yes, so I work with the Community Mental Health Initiative here in Corner Brook. I'm the Mental Health Promotions Coordinator, so I have my hands in a lot. We partner with so many community partners, it's hard to name drop them all.
Yeah.
Violence Prevention West, we work with the YMCA, CYN, we're in schools trying to get information about mental health and stigma awareness out there so people have an understanding. And it's just, I think if people really need the information, there's signs up, there's numbers up, there's so many things that we can offer. I can even, like, they can contact me if they like. I'm on Facebook, I'm not hard to find.
Right.
And I mean, we can always direct people where they need to go. And like the Doorways program, like I mentioned, I've used Doorways before, and it's like a one-off. You go in, you sit down, you talk to somebody, and that could lead to something else. So it's really good. And for Corner Brook, there's the Corner Brook Pride Committee, and there's a lot of like-minded individuals that we're all here for the common goal. Like, we're equality everywhere. That's it, right? Like, we're no different than anybody else.
Of course. So Corner Brook obviously has changed over the years with that mindset, of course, because I know that, again, dating ourselves here, you know, growing up, that
Speak for yourself now.
that wasn't a thing growing up.
No, it
but
wasn't
it seems
back
to be
then.
now. So do you think that in dealing with the public that you deal with, that because of the I want to say overwhelming positive response we're seeing in all of these community organizations and programs, that our youth and our young adults and even our, you know, older adults are having an easier time or a better time in this community in terms of you know, making changes to their lives that are pivotal for them?
I think the information is getting out there. The exposure, I think, is the main thing. Like, we're actually seeing more of it. You see trans people in public more. You see other rainbow community members more often. And you go back 20, 30 years, you probably didn't see that. I use the example from Stephenville when the first family of color moved in, it was the talk of the town.
Yes.
Whereas now, nothing gets mentioned because it's just so normalized now.
Right.
And I think eventually having somebody go by they, them pronouns, or somebody who wishes to go by she, her pronouns but doesn't want to medically transition, so it'll become more commonplace. So it'll become to a point where it's just so normalized that everyone would be just, hey, how's it going, Kevin?
Yeah.
And that's as far as it'll go.
Right.
We'll get there. It'll take time.
And I think we're pretty close. To get a little personal with you, I want to know about your parents. How did your parents take this transition for you? Were they supportive? Were they not? How are they today?
That's a long story.
Okay. Yeah, and I totally understand that probably would take a little more time than we have left available to talk about, and I completely get that. So, other family members, brothers, sisters?
My sister is 100% supportive. Yeah. My Aunt Pam is a godsend. She's amazing. And I mean, Dad's family is fairly small, so it's only really him and my sister. The rest of the family, the older family, have already passed.
Right.
So, but the cousins and the younger ones, they're more accepting to it because they see it more often. I'm not back in Stephenville very often, and most of the family is back in that area, so I don't get to see them too often.
Okay.
But for like my aunt and my sister, I've no issues. Like, they were like, oh, okay, cool. Like, that was it. Like, there was no worries about anything. Yeah. And the family that I've met out here and friends that I've met out here were so accepting that it was just almost brings a tear to your eye. Like, you can just come here and be you.
Yes.
And like, even back home, there's tons of people that are accepting and they're perfectly okay with everything, as they should be, because it really has no meaning to them.
Right.
But again, exposure. if you're not exposed to it or you don't know about it, it's harder to really understand.
Right.
So, I mean, having somebody explain things helps. I've had people who were very transphobic initially, but now are probably some of the biggest supporters I have. Like they didn't understand. They thought you were born one way, that's how you are. When you explain it to them, and it takes time, because I mean, years and years, especially for the older generation, they're so used to things being a certain way.
Right.
It's not an excuse, but that's what they're used to.
Of course.
So exposure, 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 and eventually they're going to be fine.
So advice for anyone right now who's going through this, who doesn't seem to have the support for friends and family, what would you say?
I went to social media for mine. Initially, I didn't tell anybody of my immediate friend group or family. I went to social platforms like Instagram or the Facebook groups, and that's where I met my initial people who were there to help. They were there for the support. Like, they give you the tips on how to do things a certain way, anecdotally, where to get shoes to fit, because buying 13s is not the easiest thing in the world.
No.
But I would definitely start off with social media, and then I would look at local groups like the trans support group here that's held up at Grenfell. I believe we have a meeting coming up soon.
Okay.
If I had the posters, I would have brought them with me. And groups like those where it's parents of trans individuals and trans individuals themselves all coming together to talk about what's going on.
Right.
You know, like things like that help. But those weren't around when I was growing up.
No.
Right? It wasn't talked about in schools. It was still very gender binary back then.
Yes.
And slow progression, but we're making progress, and that's the main part.
Right. So if there's anyone that's watching, of course, they can certainly have some kind of joy and happiness knowing that there is a group that they can reach out to, not just on social media, which of course is a good platform to start with, but also here locally. There are a lot of organizations, and I really want to thank you for sharing that with me and with our viewers. And I know that there's going to be people watching that are going to have questions and are going to need help, and I think that you've done a great job in sharing that with all of us here. I really want to thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for dropping in. Folks, thank you for taking the time to watch our community. I hope to see you again next time. Until then, bye for now.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
With the economic impact of COVID-19 deepening, food banks across Canada are concerned about not having enough food to meet the demand, with many reporting only a 2-week supply remaining. That's why Rogers is partnering with Food Banks Canada in this critical time of need by donating 1 million meals for our fellow Canadians. Let's do what we can. It's time to step up to the plate and donate at foodbankscanada.ca. Together, we can make more possible.
Good evening, 007.
Tell me what you know of James Bond.
He'll light the fuse on any explosive situation.
Got your attention.
007 license to kill.
Is this really what you want? Living in the shadows? Always alone?
I don't stop to think about it.
The economic impact of COVID-19 has drastically affected food banks across Canada. Many only have enough food for the next 2 weeks. But when you donate to Food Banks Canada, every dollar can be stretched further.